So, hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by expert in human work evolution, Oliver Pickup. How are you doing, Oliver?
Very good, Glenn. Good to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, Oliver, please, could you give the viewers and listeners a little bit of a background on yourself, but also the activities and projects you're involved in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great to be here. I coined that phrase human work evolution storyteller a few years ago, actually, because my career has evolved a little bit. So I write and I speak about essentially the future of work. But I think lots of conversations around work at the moment jump to the future of work and the future of AI, leaving humans almost as an afterthought. So this is
Yeah.
why human work evolution is really important. I'm really interested in what humans are going to do with technology, around technology, and without technology. I want humans to be the carpenters rather than be the nail at the other end of the hammer. So I'm really keen on enabling humans and understanding how humans can be the lead dance partner because
Mm.
we are in this AI era. We want to use technology. We don't want technology to be the lead dance partner there. So that's what I am at the moment. But my career has evolved. I started out 20 years ago plus now as a sports journalist in
All
London,
right.
which is where I live now.
Yeah.
But then my first child, a boy, came along 12 years ago. So weekends became quite sacrosanct. I
Yeah.
couldn't go and cover Crystal Palace or, a rugby match or whatever on a Saturday and then do a Sunday for Monday report. Because the weekend was important family time. So I pivoted to technology and business. And then 3.5 years ago, ChatGPT was launched. I was known as this technology and business writer. And I had FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete, when ChatGPT came along. I was really sort of cognizant of the threat that it presented. And so have spent the last 3 years shifting away from writing to transition to become a speaker in
Yeah.
this human work evolution space. And I must say, I'm absolutely loving it. It's a really interesting journey, but it just goes to show the importance of, being aware of threats and upskilling oneself
Yeah.
so we can make the most of the here and now.
Yeah, and that's crucial. And I think that there's some really interesting points in there. This sort of the idea about, work style and lifestyle having to align as well. And of course, when you're, with family situation, you have different needs and wants. The traditional 9 to 5 or the traditional coverage as a sports journalist where things happen at the weekends, you have to evolve. You have to be flexible and find the new opportunities. And I think this is something that's really interesting, Oliver, that you've obviously understood, and as well as with the reskilling and upskilling element of well, really sort of made this part of your everyday life and how you wanted to adapt things.
It's been interesting because when I realized I had this FOBO, that's when I coined the phrase human work evolution.
Right.
And I thought, okay, so how are people going to discover me? So I started doing this long read monthly newsletter called Go Flux Yourself, How to
Yes.
Navigate Human Work Evolution. And yeah, my mum's not sure about the title either. But it's a good way for people to understand, who I'm speaking to, what I'm thinking about. And I've also started doing a weekly video because in this world of AI slop, I see it as a AI slop opportunity, if you like, to show my humanity.
Yeah.
They're just 3-minute videos. They're called Thank Flux It's Friday. Again, a little bit cheeky. But in terms of, it's really helped elevate my standing really and made people sit up and take note. And I've recently been working at London Tech Week as a host and a presenter and moderating on the main stage. And I'm now delivering keynotes for businesses throughout Britain and beyond on how to navigate human work evolution because it's a really important topic. It's all very well investing in technology, but if you're not taking your people with you, that's a problem.
It really is. And it's essential for all of us. And, in terms of the journey that you've been making yourself, Oliver, how do we as individuals, how do we future-proof ourselves? How do we make sure that we are not in a lane that's going to come obsolete in the near to medium future?
Well, a good question, but I would caution in trying to future-proof anything because
Right.
things are happening so quickly. Hence the name of the newsletter, "Go Flux Yourself," because we are in this state of flux. I
Yeah.
don't think if you think about future-proof, it implies a finish line. I don't think there is one. It's a current you stay afloat in, not a destination you arrive at.
Right.
So I think if you were to say what skills do I need now, what are the 10 fixed skills of 2030 that you need? You're handing someone a map of a country that won't necessarily exist by the time you get there. So I
Yeah.
think what I will say though is, and I talk about this quite a lot in my writing and my speaking. There's this great quote by a lady called Minouche Shafik, Dame Minouche Shafik. She was president of Columbia University and more recently has been, I think she's chair of the V&A at the moment. She was also Keir Starmer's chief economic advisor, but I suspect that job might go by the wayside.
Yeah.
Anyway, she has this great quote, and it's from an interview almost a decade old now, 2018, where she says, "In the past, jobs were about muscles. Now jobs are about brains, and in the future they'll be about the heart." And that
Mm.
really, I think, gets to the key point that I try and make in what I in my content. It is going to be about the heart. It's those sort of soft skills, supposedly soft skills, and I have what I call the seven C's. So this is collaboration, communication, compassion, courage, curiosity, critical thinking, and creativity. All these seven C's are going to become so much more important as the machines get smarter. So
Yeah.
that's, I think, how I'm trying to if you like, future-proof myself as best as possible. It's being able to think about that sort of grounding and the importance of those seven C's.
That's
There
great.
isn't, and through my work, I've realized that actually AI is a sort of friction removal machine, if you like. And actually, friction is the sensation of a skill being built. All those C's that I mentioned require that friction. A gym works because the weights are heavy. If you
Yeah.
take the resistance out, you haven't upgraded the gym, you've bought an expensive chair, and actually your muscles atrophy. And I
Yeah.
think
Mm.
what I worry about, I'm the father of two kids as well. My eldest, Freddie, he's about to start secondary school in September. So this is
Right.
sort of real, and I really am conscious that people are outsourcing their cognitive muscle, their cognitive ability to AI at the moment.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll come on to that a little bit. But through the last 3.5 years, I've been writing about AI for over a decade now, but particularly since generative AI came along, I can see now that there are sort of two narratives that we're seeing. And one is, if you like, it might be the martyr. So it is someone who feels as though AI is something that is happening to them. They are resistant. They have no way of changing this huge torrent of technology, and they're just waiting in line to retire essentially, sooner rather than later. And then you've got the other side, which is there's, if you like, the zealots. So these are people who will outsource everything to AI. They will defer to AI for every single decision. And they are now known, this is a term in a Cambridge University dictionary, as sloppers. They are AI sloppers. They will just churn out, they will sort of pass on emails, they'll pass on projects that haven't really been sense checked.
Yeah.
And these are the sort of two narratives that we have. And I don't think either is particularly helpful. I think there's a third way, a third model, and this is what I try and teach people, is AI agnosticism. So it's an acknowledgement of, these two exhausting stories, either side will dominate. It'll take your job or you use it for everything. They're both traps. We need to treat it as a tool, neither's a savior or a threat. So I think it's good to bear in mind those three different models because to get to the agnostic stage, you have to invest in the relationship layer because trust becomes the differentiator.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right as well because, like I guess it's like most tools, Oliver, that either you use it or it starts to use you. And I think that you put yourself in the driving seat of these things, you're in the best situation possible, but you need to understand it
Yeah,
and be able to sense check like any tool that you're utilizing so you get out with the right outcomes and you've got your own voice within that.
totally. Absolutely right. And I think that individuality is, again, critical. It's something I try and teach my kids. I
Yeah.
attended a couple of weeks ago South by Southwest London, and there was an excellent session on attention span. And it was led by, it was a fireside chat, but and the star draw was a lady called Gloria Mark, who is a professor of essentially engagement at University of Irvine in California,
Yeah.
and she's been tracking attention span on screens specifically since 2003, and back then it was a minute and a half we could spend on a screen, and from about 2014 to 2003, I think, or maybe it was 2002 when the data stopped, it shrunk to 47 seconds. And I mean,
Wow.
she said, this is like being at a cocktail party and having just 47 seconds to speak to someone. You can't really get sort of stuck into things. And I've spoken
Yeah.
to, teachers, head teachers who worry that actually the kids are losing this ability to concentrate, whether it's through screens, whether it's through using AI or not really engaging, not having what Cal Newport calls that sort of deep work.
Hmm.
And I worry that the kids of today in particular and their parents aren't allowing that kind of friction, allowing that hard work to really understand the key skills that are required here.
Hmm. So is that kind of a case of just looking for the shortcuts, basically,
I
Oliver,
think
with this
so,
sort of,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and actually, it's human nature. It's human nature to expend as little energy as possible. And that's physical energy and mental energy as well. So if there is an option we will often go for it. And I've fallen foul of this in the past, but I have, in the last year or so, I had a great realization that I don't want my cognitive ability to atrophy. I want to
yeah.
keep, I want to be smart. I don't want to also, send something along and not know what it's about and not be able to vouch for it and be caught out.
Hmm.
There are many sort of examples of this happening. Big four professional services firms, lawyers are making these mistakes. I mean, it's
Many,
incredible. It's
yeah.
incredible what people will actually do to cut those corners.
Yeah, I think that's a really serious issue as well. That, this human in the loop angle to things as well. You can use the tools, but at the end of the day, it has to be in your voice, and you need to be able to sort of control what you're doing as well. And I think it's interesting what you say about attention spans and, this idea of deep learning, doing stuff because it's difficult, don't do stuff because it's easy. And this kind of that we need to avoid rewiring our brains so we become basically passive in a lot of these crucial elements of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, this is called depth of processing, according to Gloria Mark.
Okay.
And so that is the effort of doing the thinking, and that's what sort of lodges things in your memory.
Yeah.
If you outsource that effort, the learning never really happens.
Yeah.
There are there's data coming through now that shows that the problems with the lack of cognitive debt, if you like, from Microsoft, Carnegie Mellon. There's a Swiss business school as well, and MIT Media Lab had a recent study. So that we are seeing that this data is coming through now that is really worrying. But there's a deeper, more underlying problem, I think, here. You may be familiar with what's called the Flynn effect. So this determined
Yeah.
that actually since the 1930s, globally, our IQs have been going up, and then that starts to plateau and then decline in the 1990s. So this is before smartphones.
Yeah.
Some mobile phones were about, not many, but then it takes another nosedive around 2010, which, by then the iPhone's been out for 3 years, so it's fairly ubiquitous, the smartphone.
Yeah.
And so the reverse Flynn effect shows that even within generations, there is this decline in IQ. We're getting dumber, essentially.
Right.
And
Mm.
this, and I mean, the data isn't um, particularly substantial. Lots of it comes from Danish military data. So when you get conscripted at 18, they do an IQ test, and they can see that, an older brother is a little bit sharper than the younger brother who comes through, 5 years later.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's not comprehensive, but I really worry that if we go too far down the path of being, sloppers essentially, then we'll have a real problem in how things run in a
Yeah.
decade or so's time. So you have to. It's a bit like any muscle: use it or lose it.
Completely, completely. And I think that's a sort of a wake up call. And it's too easy to let these things slide. And then by the time you realize it's too late, and it's very difficult to fight the tide once it's already come in.
Yeah, precisely. And I
Mm.
think there's something here about trust. I've published my latest newsletter focused on trust. I've actually just finished almost 3 weeks of jury service here in the UK,
Right.
and it's been fascinating. I started June at South by Southwest, talking at London Tech Week, delivering keynotes on the importance of how we use technology, and then I'm sort of teleported into this almost medieval courtroom where people are wearing wigs and you can't
Yeah.
talk to anyone, and you're one of 12 strangers who are determining the fate of someone in the dock, and it's all about trust. The moderated session that I did at London Tech Week was about the future of agentic commerce, and it was
Okay.
really interesting. So it was a bit like there were loads of stats saying, well, we're all going to have AI agents. We're all going to let AI agents buy things for us as well as research in by the end of the decade. Loads of us are, but actually now currently only I think it was 8% of US shoppers will trust AI to make that final step. So the
Right.
way I look at this is it's a bit like being on a plane. We don't really worry about what the plane's doing 38,000 feet above the air. We just care about the kind of 5 minutes either side, the landing and the takeoff, and we want humans to be there for that. And I think,
Yeah.
in a way, we're still at that level with AI. So while everyone might sort of think, oh yeah, AI agents of the future, only if you give them permission. And I think, yeah, that trust point is so huge and going to be really one the businesses really need to tackle in the
Yeah.
coming years.
I think so too, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to have those sort of decisions as well. And, to do the donkey work, to do the grunt work is absolutely fine. But I think that, to make those specific decisions as well, that's absolutely crucial. And I think to be able to be on top of that is something that I don't see that being seeded anytime soon, just because the way we are as human beings, we like to have that sort of final control of some of these elements.
Yeah, I think so. There's also an element of enjoyment in shopping. I remember when I
Yeah.
was a kid, our Boxing Day sales used to be taken into Manchester by my mum and, spend the whole day. And, by the end of it, you'd probably have a couple of t-shirts and a jumper and that was it. But it consumed the whole time.
It's the
And so
process.
it's
Yeah.
the process as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But another thing that is on my mind, and it's linked, I think, to the cognitive atrophy point as well, because we are seeding things to technology, we are kind of seeding social engagement, I think. There was a great long read essay last year in The Atlantic by a guy called Derek Thompson, who's well worth looking up. And it was called The Antisocial Century. And essentially, the hypothesis was the better that technology has got, the more reclusive we have become. We've got less reason to go out. We've got great streaming services, we've got
Right.
great tech and that sort of thing. But actually, it's making us all a bit lonelier. And we are humans are pack animals, we're social animals, and this loneliness is rising globally. Emotional As a result, emotional intelligence is falling,
Yeah.
and the industry is now selling synthetic companions as the fix.
Right.
Interestingly,
Yeah.
data shows that there are 7 times as many AI girlfriends than AI boyfriends. So this is something that is affecting young men.
Right.
But with AI companions, you don't get the messiness, you don't get the difficult conversations. You get something that is essentially agrees with you, which is very agreeable. So when you would get into the real world and have to, get a job or whatever you have to navigate, you don't really have the tools there.
Yeah.
So there's that point, but also loneliness is damaging for you. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It
Mm.
increases your mortality rate if you're not speaking to people.
Mm.
So I think real relationships are difficult by design, but you learn to read a face, you repair a rupture, you kind of sit with disagreement, and a bot that flatters you teaches you none of that. Having said that, there are definite. I'm not sort of beating AI with a stick because there are definite great use cases. It might be, you know, the same tool is a lifeline for an isolated teenager who finds their community online, or a neurodivergent kid who finds that nobody likes them at school. It's important for that. So
Yeah.
it's not a kind of blanket verdict. It's working out for whom the tool is going to help and for whom it's going to harm. And we're
Yeah.
starting to see, I'm slightly conflating AI with social media and smartphones now, but we're starting to see the wind shift a little bit with the bans, the social media bans coming in, first in Australia, and now in the UK. I mean, it's going to be arguably the most important piece of legacy that the outgoing Prime Minister
Mm.
Keir Starmer has, actually.
Yeah, and this is also all of an opportunity that there's more and more value being put in face-to-face relationships. So even though we've gone through
Yeah.
sort of the AI slop and the digital relationships and things, it's always good for sort of like filling in the gaps, absolutely. But the value and the price and the focus we put on human to human contact maybe has got sort of a different value maybe we didn't appreciate 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think actually there's been a problem thinking about early careers now. There's been a sort of quite myopic approach by business leaders for whatever reason. They believe that AI is going to, take out the grunt work, as you said.
Yeah.
And we've seen a graduate jobs in the UK, graduate openings in the UK have gone down 2/3 since ChatGPT was launched. Maybe a coincidence, it may not, but the sense is that companies are investing in AI. I'm seeing it in some of the stuff that I do. I ghostwrite
Yeah.
thought leadership for business leaders, and some of the clients are saying, well, actually, we're starting to use a bit more AI, so how can we use you a bit more? And I
Mm.
argue that actually it's putting the cart before the horse. You need the human at the start to really understand what's going on here. And maybe you use the AI to polish or critique, let's say, a thought leadership article. But I think business leaders have shown that they are getting it wrong, and some of them are admitting it by effectively, you've got a career ladder, and effectively they are chopping away the bottom rung of
Yeah.
that career ladder. And yet they, leaders will tell you the skills that they prize the most, the human ones. So it's judgment, creativity, empathy. And then they buy tools that strip out the friction those skills are built through. So it feels like we're eroding the thing that we say we value,
Mm.
with our own budgets. So
Completely.
again, if you sort of saw off the bottom rung of that ladder to save money, you haven't made it more efficient. You've made sure nobody new can climb it. And then, where do you get the leaders of tomorrow from? You
Mm.
wonder in 10 years why you've got no experienced people. So I think that's an important point to land.
Yeah, and is this kind of part of the education process as well? Because it seems to be
Totally.
corporations are coming up AI from with two goals in mind: reduce count and make things more efficient. That's the so they're basically diametrically opposed to the actual workers who have a very different mindset about how they want to use technology, AI, and it can utilize them. So hopefully the pendulum will swing back as this sort of trial and error continues.
Yeah, I think actually there are some primary schools that are getting this right now. I keep thinking about an interview I had with a guy who used to be my English teacher and inspired me to read English at St Andrews. He'd been at St Andrews as well, and
Yeah,
he's now a head teacher up in Edinburgh for a prep school. And he said, "Wow, I remember being one of my lowest point in my career, arguably, was when we had an Ofsted report. So the school assessors come in." And there's this sort of chaos. All right, how can we make it look good? And a couple of his teachers said, "Oh, we haven't got enough tech in this particular room." So they kind of distracted the Ofsted guy and then threw a load of iPads in this room. And he said, "Oh, actually, that's completely the wrong approach. I think there
yeah,
has been this sort of knee-jerk, oh, we must have more tech. Tech is good." And I think there's now a realization that if we need to kind of unwind that, and it is the sort of the boring stuff, if you like, the friction providing
yeah.
learning that is required. However, at in higher education at university, I'd argue that they haven't really got a model that provides good value. So if you're in the UK, you're looking at, let's say, 60, 70 grand's worth of debt you're going to be saddled with. And as I
Yeah,
mentioned before,
significant.
the jobs aren't necessarily there. So I've spoken to a few people about this, and a few ideas are coming through. For example, here in the UK, NHS medics have to have a course of, I think it's about 7 years now, but you very much get the rotation. So you go into hospitals, you learn different
Right.
skills, and maybe we just do that for other courses and in business as well. So actually, when that person does leave university, they do have the skills, they have worked in the workplace.
Hmm.
So I'd like to see that a bit more because, yeah, as I mentioned, I've got a son who's starting secondary school. I don't know in 7 years' time whether the value proposition of university will be there.
Yeah.
And so I think there is something that very much higher education needs to really focus on and improve. And businesses should also take a bit more of a chance on people and maybe look beyond degrees, and look at their, you know, the clubs that they're in, or maybe the projects that they've been involved with, whether it's a charity. But I'm also aware that this is almost a kind of middle class boost because I'm in the fortunate position that I can take my son to cricket practice, or
Yeah.
and drama and stuff, and that's not the same for everyone. It feels like with AI as well, we can buy the subscriptions and the apps and stuff, but that's not the same for everyone. So I worry that there's going to be a gap that's building up.
Mm. Yeah, I think the digital divide is a serious issue, but I think this remodeling in the same way that sort of sort of the kindergarten, nursery school, primary school is evolving. That everyone has to have tech and iPads. Then suddenly it's going backwards. We need to learn how to think. We need to look at empathy, these kind of elements. And I think this same questioning of the role of higher education, is it more a place for smart people to come together and create businesses, share ideas, like the old coffee shops idea as well. You've got sort of smart, forward-looking people being brought together from different backgrounds, and actually this can create the spark for some interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that actually. I really like that idea. And I think, we are starting to see that more. There's no doubt that greater diversity
Yeah.
within teams has many, many benefits, and not just for the bottom line as well.
Yeah, no, completely. Oliver, this is a fascinating process, and it's kind of, as you say, it's evolution. It's not revolution, but also
Yeah.
it's something that we're never finished with. We're always in beta, and we need to be sort of looking at it. We need to be really sort of changing and evolving as we go along as well. And as you said earlier on, it's not a destination, it's the process,
Mm,
and it never ends. So we
yeah,
need to have this mindset that we don't just sort of, do our school and go to university, that's it, and then we go into the world of work. It's constant and, dare I say, more responsibility on our own shoulders to take
totally.
care of our own futures as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and that's come out in a few of the sessions I've done in the last few months around, future of education, and education leaders acknowledge that actually it's up to the individual to take
Yeah.
responsibility. Exactly that. And you're based in Sweden, aren't you? I think I can't
Yeah.
remember what the organization's called now, but there's a very influential organization that argues that sort of dogma that, if you don't get off your bum, essentially, no one else is going to do this for you.
They're not. Yeah.
I do subscribe to that. But it's just about being made aware of what is out there and encouraging people to make those opportunities and help them realize that it's not just going to happen to them. That
No.
it's not going to land on their lap.
Yeah.
They need to invest in themselves. And that's certainly what I'm trying to tell my kids. And my friends as well, people who are stuck
Yeah.
in these jobs who aren't necessarily they feel as though, oh, yeah, they're going to get a knock on the door, and maybe that's that. But I think, yeah, we talked before about education. There is a great and exciting opportunity now for people in in careers or older who we need to keep learning. We need to keep
Yeah.
evolving ourselves.
Yeah.
There's going to be a book coming out in a few months by Linda Grattan, who wrote The 100-Year Life almost a decade ago now, a really influential book. This latest book is How to Live the 100-Year Life. And part of that is about how to, evolve
Yeah.
oneself and be open-minded to
Yes.
learning. And I'm going to be certainly looking forward to reading that one.
Well, absolutely. As we both you and I fight against becoming obsolete, and I'm certainly too young and too poor to be retired, so I might as well keep
Me too.
learning.
Alas, yes.
That's the best way. Oliver, really appreciate it, my friend. Fantastic talking to you, and yeah, look forward to the updates and hearing more in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Glenn. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.